All right, I want to begin this segment by asking you a few questions to ponder. Those of you who are parents, do you think that parents should have a say in their children's education? Do you think that students should not be judged according to the color of their skin? Or do you think that parents should know if their children at school claim to identify as a transgender? Or do you think that books that are sexually explicit and have sexually explicit images should be removed from school libraries? Well, if you answered yes to any of those questions, then you should be informed that a researcher with the Southern Poverty Law Center says that you might unknowingly be a member of the Uptown Klan. The Uptown Klan. Well, we here at the Family Research Center, we know that the SPLC should not be believed on anything as it relates to the truth. After all, they themselves inspired now convicted terrorist Floyd Corkins to come to our headquarters to attempt a mass murder about a decade ago. So here to discuss the newest frontier of the SPLC's crusade of misinformation is Tyler O'Neill. He's the managing editor for the Daily Signal and the author of the book, Making Hate Pay, The Corruption of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Tyler, welcome back to Washington Watch. We're honored to have you.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Jody.
Well, listen, let's kind of unfold this, unpack it for our viewers, our listeners. What is this State of Black America report that the SPLC is talking about?
Yeah, so the National Urban League released this State of Black America report, which purports to discuss the threats that Black Americans face to their civil liberties. And it's interesting because it mentions legitimate terrorist, white supremacist attack and the rise of hate crimes that the FBI has documented. But then it pivots to conservative politics, and it suggests that any effort to decrease abortion access or ensure that voting that when people vote, they can show their ID, any voter integrity efforts, or of course the parental rights movement itself. If you support any of these things, you are a threat to the civil rights of Black Americans, according to this report. And they claim that the parental rights movement is rooted in racism, which is just shocking to me. And as you noted, one of the reports in the State of Black America was written by an SPLC researcher, and she claimed that if you support the parental rights movement, you are a descendant, an echo of the Uptown Klans that formed to continue segregation after Brown v. Board.
Okay, we got to go further with this, Tyler. I've got to, and I share your struggle with this. I'm struggling with it as well. But unpack for us this whole concept of parental rights somehow being steeped in racism. Parents have rights to raise their children. How in the world are they going from point A to point B to say that the parental rights movement is steeped in racism?
So much of it traces back to critical race theory and then to the claim that books are being banned. And they suggest, interestingly, the State of Black America says that Fahrenheit 451 is coming true in our lifetimes.
Explain that. What is Fahrenheit 451? Yeah.
So Fahrenheit 451 is a great book by Ray Bradbury. It's a dystopian novel about a government that burns books. And it's interesting because the State of Black America claims that the efforts to ban books from school libraries, and here we're talking about books like Lawn Boy and Genderqueer, books that often have pornographic images or pornographic text that describe lewd sexual acts. These books that parents rightly want out of school libraries so that young children cannot be exposed to them in school. These restricting these books amounts to an attack on Black people and LGBT people, essentially the argument goes, because, and it's very interesting, this SPLC report, the way she describes these books. She doesn't acknowledge the concerns about pornographic content in these tomes. She goes directly and says, these books often show LGBT people or people of color. And that's such a red herring and a distraction from the true issue. But she brings it up as an example of, oh, there's racism here, when there isn't racism at all. Like, some of the most the strongest advocates for parental rights that I know here in where I live in Northern Virginia, you have Azra Nomani, who is by no means white. You actually have a woman who was recently booted from from office in Virginia, who is Indian American and very
Tyler,
dark.
We've got about 15 seconds.
But people of all races have been frustrated and infuriated to see critical race theory taught in schools and pornographic materials in school libraries.